Hey, everybody. Welcome to Buddhist Center. It's Sunday. We're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment again, as we've done so many Sundays in the past. And how fortunate are we? We're among the very, very few beings that will ever be able to look at this text, ever be able to contemplate what this could mean. And now we've gone through it. Now this is our second round. Once we went through it with Khenser Geshe Wandak, and then, hold on one second. I need to do something. I need to enable share. Okay, there we go. So I went through this once with Khenser Geshe Wandak, and now we're so fortunate to be able to have the time and the desire to go through it again. So isn't that awesome that we're all here joined today to continue to look at exactly what we will need to know in order to have complete fearlessness, in order to have bliss. We all want to have happiness. There's no question about that. We seek it out in various ways every day of our life. Every decision that we make based on, oh, I want to eliminate some kind of suffering and I want to have some kind of happiness, be it eating or going to buy a new thing. I think that you would agree with me that most of the things that we participate in life fulfill those categories. So if we could figure out a way to really get the things that we seek, that would be incredible. And the fact is there is a way to get those things that we seek, but to get them in a way that's complete, that isn't tainted, that isn't contaminated, that doesn't have a self-destruct mechanism within it, that will always be a state of freedom from suffering, and will always be a state of bliss. And wait, wow. We have the information that has a pathway that can lead some, person like me from where I sit, from where I abide mentally to a state of perfection. And it's with certainty. And there's nothing left out in the Lam Rim. And that's why it's so great. It's just such a complete path that we find presented in Lama Tsongkhapa's texts, that when we really get a handle on it, we can get a handle on, one, the fact that it's real, that we will logically be able to posit that these things seem like they have basis and are something that should be practiced. And two, we'll be able to have a complete path, a complete integrated path that will be the quickest path that we could possibly engage in, because it's such an efficient path, and that path is catered to our own individual mind, because the Buddha taught to so many different aptitudes. So we have to really become mindfully, become centered, become honest with ourselves, become realistic, figure out who we really are. Look at the mirror of the Dharma, compare who we really are with that, and then start working towards having our minds, having who we really are, become more like what we read in the Dharma, what we read from the great holy masters' texts. Because what we read in those texts are basically, testimonials. It's them stating how their minds work. These poems, these stanzas are just basically displays of these great beings' minds, of how they think, of what they find important, and so forth. And we eventually will have that same mind that we can display, because we'll engage in exactly what they engaged in to get to that place, which is so holy and so incredible. And how fortunate are we, once again, that we have this life of leisure. We have all the causes and conditions. We have these incredible teachers, so many incredible teachers in the world. And we've had so many incredible teachers that have passed on that will then once again emanate in our lives in some other way. And we really need to take the essence of this opportunity that we have. And the greatest thing is that we should all rejoice in is that we're doing exactly that right now. We're engaging in exactly the method that will give rise to the results that we're truly looking for, and the results that we've been looking for since beginningless time, trying to be happy, trying not to suffer, trying to be happy, trying not to suffer. So over and over and over again, since beginningless time, we've done that, and we've not succeeded in a complete way. Prove it, here we are, not being happy in a complete way and still having to suffer. So since beginningless time, we've done this over and over and over again. And here we're doing something about the problem that we've always had. And the problem that we've always had is that we never get to that thing that we're seeking, which is freedom from suffering and complete peace and bliss. And all of these holy beings are so kind to us to come into the world to show us exactly what we have to do to achieve that state in a real way that we've been searching after since beginningless time. How to stop running, how to be able to just sit in peace and contentment and satisfaction. That's just great. And we're among very few humans, we can say for sure, that are participating in a pathway that will lead to that amazing result, which has the stability of happiness that we've always been seeking. So before we get started, let's get into the 7-point Vairocana posture we always get into before we start our class, to try to get our mind into a clear place, our mind into a calm place, our mind into a place where we don't have excitement and scattering going on. We don't have dullness and lethargy and sleeping going on. We're trying to get our minds into a very, very clear, stable, focused place. So we always, do everything we can before we get into our actual practice to, support the process of our mind getting as clear as possible, so that it can get as calm and as clear as possible simultaneously, so that then we can aim it at things in a really effective way, in a really efficient way, because we've trained ourselves how to kind of shoot at that target over and over and over again. And our aim gets better and better over time. So the way that we get better at it is by practicing. The way that we get better at not letting our minds sink into sleepiness when we're trying to meditate, or the way we get better at not letting our minds be so excited and distracted that we can barely even, come for a moment, between other things to our object or our focal object. We're really, really trying to work on. And we're going to find in the Lamrim text in this section that Lama Tsongkhapa once again talks about, even in analytical meditation, where we need this skill of a calm mind that isn't distracted by excitement or dullness or scattering or lethargy, any of the names that we know what they mean, the sinking feeling or the excited feeling. We really, even when we're doing analysis, want to make sure our mind isn't doing that, of course, right? So this is why we're practicing this skill, to be able to make our minds more serviceable, even when we're doing analytical meditation. If we're not doing a fixed meditation, this will become something that carries over into our actual, our ability to read something, read the Lamrim Chemo, and just kind of hold on to that information and not have to read the paragraph 16 times like I have to sometimes. So these are skills that we're trying to set. That's why we do this every time before class. And you'll see how it applies over and over again. All of these exercises that we do, which are just little, drops, in the water, little pebbles in the water, of how you would do something that hopefully create this ripple into a beautiful, beautiful practice that you'll incorporate into your daily lives. And I think that you'll see these things that we do over and over again, these reflections we do about the types of suffering, these reflections we do about emptiness, these reflections we do about bodhicitta, are all reflections that we find in these great texts, and are all reflections that the great masters have done in order to achieve their aims. This is the motivation This is the reasoning behind what we're doing. So why are we here today? What's the purpose of being here today? It's to achieve, a state of a freedom from the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. That's why we're here. That's the only way we can get what we really want. What do we really want? We really want to not have suffering, because suffering stinks. So we really don't want to have suffering. And we want to have as much happiness as possible. Most of us, I can't say everyone, believe that in some way we can achieve something better than we have, at least better than we have now. And Buddhism says we can achieve this completely perfect place. So our motivation for being here, for doing this 7-point Vairocana, for having this focal objects and doing this meditation on the breath, etc., is to get rid of the afflictive obstructions, the obstructions to omniscience, so we can get what we want. So we can finally, after beginningless times of trying and failing, we're going to get what we want if we engage in this really specific path and we don't miss any of the parts. And that's why we're here today. We're here to find out exactly what those specific parts are, exactly what we need to do today, so that we can, if we're already working, work with more efficiency, or work with more information, or, have familiarized ourselves a little bit more today with this stuff. And why? So that we can eventually never have to be fearful again, and never have a happiness that changes into suffering again, because we'll have a happiness that only goes from bliss to bliss to bliss. There's no changing that peak of bliss that you'll have. It'll just be bliss. And there's no changing of suffering to happiness, suffering to happiness. There just won't be suffering, because you'll have removed the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. So when we say we come to Buddhism because we're dissatisfied, or we don't like this, or we found some other things weren't what we were looking for, what we're really saying is we're trying to figure out how to not suffer and how to be happy. And Buddhism says that there's a way to do that in a perfect way. So if we're here because we were dissatisfied, or we weren't finding answers to so many questions, the good news is that we have the final answers to the questions, and we just have to really search out what they are, apply them, and then take this mental consciousness from a diluted place with defilements to a place of purity, just like Buddha did, with the same exact steps that Buddha used. So this is why we, dip, the little pebbles in the water here and here. We do this little meditation here. We talk bodhicitta here, renunciation here, to try to be able to create this very clear picture of what we will have to be. And we learn about what the Buddhas are. So we learn about who we will become, because we will all become Buddha 100%, because we all have Buddha nature. And this is why I just last minute chose to read this Praise of Dharma Dhatu by Arya Nagarjuna that we'll get into in a little bit, because it talks about this Buddha nature, this incredible treasure that we have within us, this mind that we have, that Dharmakirti says is in the nature of clear light and unsullied. We just have to find this beautiful pure mind, remove all that's sullied from it, and then that pure mind is empty of inherent existence, so it can be purely compassionate, it can be purely wise, and so forth. So let's do our exercises that we do before we get started to get our minds into a more calm, realistic place, and then we'll do some of the readings, and we'll talk about the Lamrim Chemo, and we'll hopefully get closer to Buddhahood as a group. We have this collective karma to all be here together today. It's not, some random thing that just happened. We have some similar causes and conditions that make it so that we can be here today, so that we can hear the Lamrim Chemo, so that we can hear Nagarjuna, so we can hear the King of Prayers, so we can read the King of Prayers, and so forth. And let's all rejoice in this collective karma that we have. Many of us have the same teacher. Many of us have Khenso Geshe Wandak as our root teacher. And I would say all of us who are paying attention to this probably have the teacher, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who is the manifestation in our world of Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion. We're so fortunate to have a being like this living amongst folks like myself, because myself and a being like His Holiness the Dalai Lama are so very, very different. And I see that his infinite love and compassion is something that I want so badly, and his infinite wisdom, something that I want so badly. And when I can see an example of someone who has that in our world, when I look at it really closely with logic and reasoning, it gives me some hope, because he says the same thing that Lama Tsongkhapa says, that Khyentse Geshe Wandak says, that Geshe Lapsung Gompo said, and that is that we all have this treasure, we all have this Buddha nature, and that we all have this very specific path that we can engage in to achieve a goal, which is this incredible goal of having no more fears ever again, no more suffering ever again, and the most 100% happiness at all times. Wow, we're in a really great spot. So let's do some exercising. So let's get into the 7-point Vairocana posture, and our focal object. I'm not going to get into the reasoning and everything. We've talked about this so many times. Our focal object will be breathing in and out and counting in the front generation form of Buddha Shakyamuni, in a beautiful radiant form, but static, not moving around at all. So this is going to be a fixed meditation where we're fixing our mind on just breathing in, breathing out, counting, and Buddha Shakyamuni. And we're going to not allow our minds to be distracted or sleepy or anything like that, because our little spy introspection is going to be watching to make sure that that is not happening. And if it does happen, mindfulness will bring our focal object back, breathing in, out, counting, and Buddha Shakyamuni. So let's begin there. We're so fortunate to have this human basis, an incredible, incredible basis from which we can become enlightened in one lifetime. We have a mental consciousness that can be transformed from the state that it's in right now, defiled, sullied, full of negativity, into a pure mind that has no stains whatsoever, that only has pure love, pure compassion, pure wisdom, perfect power, perfect skillful means. We can transform our minds into that state of the mind that the Buddha transformed his mind into by engaging in the same exact steps, and we're so fortunate. Rejoice in the fact that we've heard of renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness. Rejoice in the fact that we've heard of the Four Noble Truths, the correct view of emptiness presented in the second turning of the wheel of Dharma in the Heart Sutra. We've heard of Buddha nature. So fortunate to know that our mind that currently is defiled isn't in the nature of defilement. We have this treasure within us that has to be discovered, this pure mind that does not grasp at things as being inherently existent. This pure, pure, clear light mind we all possess. All sentient beings will be Buddha. Our mind is empty of inherent existence, just like the Buddha's mind is empty of inherent existence. And that lack of inherent existence, intrinsic existence, objective existence that our mind possesses allows our mind to be transformed into the pure mind that the Buddha possesses. Our mind isn't static, isn't stuck in a place that's sullied. Our mind is empty of inherent existence. Our mind currently dependently originates into the experience of suffering, because it has these defilements. But once the defilements are removed, there's nothing that can dependently originate into suffering. Once the obstructions to omniscience that are removed, there's nothing that can stop us from having perfect happiness. Now imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni, who's in a previous static form, becomes animated, becomes so ecstatic that we're here today. We're talking about all of the stages of the path to complete Buddhahood. We're not leaving off any. We're so fortunate to be living in a time when all of the teachings that Buddha gave and will ever give have been given by Buddha Shakyamuni. And what I mean by that is that the tantric teachings won't be given by all of the Buddhas that will come in various different times and eons to come. But we're so fortunate that we've met with all of the stages of the path that will allow us to become Buddha in the quickest way possible. And Buddha Shakyamuni intended for us to be able to get to Buddhahood in the quickest way possible. And that's why Buddha came to this world and shared with us not only the perfection vehicle, but the tantric vehicle as well. And Buddha Shakyamuni is ecstatic that we're looking at texts by masters who wrote about the integrated path. We're studying the lamp for the path to enlightenment. We're studying the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment that is a commentary on the lamp for the path to enlightenment. We see this integrated path that begins with the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity, then goes through the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity, then the teachings for beings of great capacity in the perfection vehicle and the tantric vehicle. We end in that beautiful Vajrayana vehicle that if we have this basis of all the things that lead up to it, we can actually practice it. We could realistically become a Buddha in one lifetime if we really put the effort in and we really have the realizations and the foundations that are necessary to practice Tantrayana properly. It's the swift path. It's like Rinpoche used to say, the jet plane that will allow us to get to Buddhahood in the swiftest way possible. It's not riding a bicycle or taking a car to a far destination. It's a jet plane, but it can only be something that we get on if we've practiced the foundational things that are necessary for us to ride that jet. And Buddha Shakyamuni is so glad that we're here because we're looking at it in terms of systematic teachings, in terms of an integrated path, but a path that has really specific gradual stages. And we're looking at it in a way which will actually produce the result of Buddhahood in that quickest way possible, in a way that we would be able to actually get on that jet plane and go quickly to Buddhahood. So now just imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni is so happy that we're here. We're looking at the complete teachings. We're looking at the sutra and the tantric teachings, and we're not looking at them hurrying in one direction or another. We're looking at them very slowly and going through them step by step, piece by piece, so we don't miss anything, so that we can arrive at that real destination of Buddhahood. Now, Buddha Shakyamuni is so happy that we're doing this. Imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni is so blissful that he has been containing the entire merit field. And now imagine that all the holy gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas explode into the space in front of you, and that Buddha Shakyamuni had been containing them. And there's almost been like a pressure valve release that takes place, this bliss that just almost got to the point that it was too much because of the happiness that Buddha has, that we're engaging in something that will bring about our infinite happiness. So now you see all those incredible beings in the space in front of you. Imagining Khenser Geshe Wandak is there, so happy that we're continuing this tradition. Imagining His Holiness and the Dalai Lama. We know the Lamrim tradition means so much to him. Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings mean so much to him. He wears that yellow hat so proudly because he knows that Lama Tsongkhapa's interpretation of Nagarjuna is just so clear. We're so fortunate that we have these teachings in our lives. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is so proud that we're engaging in engaging in the studies of the Nalanda Pandits, that he felt were so important that he wrote that incredible prayer to. Imagine His Holiness the Dalai Lama, imagining Geshe Lobsang Gompo, imagining the Lobsang Gyatso, imagining I'm sorry, imagining Demalocha Rinpoche and imagining Geshe Dorje Damdu and Umzala Geshe Aga and imagining Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladrin and Anila Tupten Chodron and Jeffrey Hopkins and Alan Wallace and Chado Rinpoche, imagining all these incredible holy beings in the space in front of you, imagining the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya and Asanga and Vasubandhu and Dharmakirti and Dignaga and Vamuktasena and Haribada and Shakyaprabha and Gunaprabha, and imagining Lama Salipa and Atisha, now imagining the beings of this profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Arya Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita and Arya Deva and Chandrakirti and Shanti Deva and Bhava Vega and Chandarashita and Kamala Shila. And then again, imagining Lama Salimpa and Atisha, imagining all these holy beings in the space in front of you, the lineage of practicing blessings, that incredible lineage that knows the nature of the mind, that clear light nature of the mind so well, passed down. Lord Vajradhara is there in the space in front of us. We see Saraha and Matripa and Talopa and Naropa and Marpa and Milarepa and Gampopa, all these holy beings who've had such an effect on our lives. And as we study Buddhism, we'll have more and more an effect on our minds, have such an effect on our spiritual monopoly, will have such an effect on our entire path and all of our progress until we become complete Buddhas. Imagining now Atisha passing the lineage of the Lam Rim and all this integrated path down to Dron Tompa, that holy Lay Lama and all the different Kadampa, old Kadampa lineages, the 3 Kadampa lineage, imagining the holy beings of the Nyingma, imagining Padmasambhava, the Sakya Pandita, imagining the Kaju, all the Karmapas, imagining the Galupa, imagining Lama Tsongkhapa there with Kirtup J and Joseph J, imagining Penchen Sunandrapa and Basu Chuji Jetsa and Jayan Sheba and Jayan Rupi Dorje, Janja Rupi Dorje and Goncho Jimmy Wampo and Jayan Gapi Lodru, 7th Dalai Lama, imagining all these holy beings in the space in front of us. We've been connected to them by Rinpoche's teachings, by His Holiness's teachings. Now, imagining all the beings of the highest Yoga Tantra lineage, Yoga Tantra, Performance Tantra, and Action Tantra, all the 35 Buddhas, all the protector deities, all these holy beings in the space in front of us. Now we recognize that we want happiness. We don't want to have suffering. All sentient beings want happiness. No sentient beings want suffering. We are no more important than any other sentient being. We recognize this. We recognize that since beginningless time, we've had every relationship possible with every single sentient being. Even the ones that we love so dearly right now have been our enemies in previous lives. Even the ones that we hate so much right now, we think are our enemies we've loved so dearly in our previous lives. Even those who are neutral to us, strangers. We even have seen strangers become those who we love so much in our current life. And people who we will never know in this life, we consider complete strangers and will always be strangers, have been so close to us in previous lives and been enemies to us in previous lives. There's no certainty. There's no stability there. And when we think about the person that we love the most in our life right now, we think about the one who's taking care of us the most. We think about the one who, when we were so vulnerable, or if we're so vulnerable, will take care of us, and how much they love us and how much that nurturing means to us. We start to recognize that we've had that relationship with every single sentient being in the universe. We've had that same power of love, that same exact feeling, that same connection to every single sentient being in the universe. We've just forgotten. We've forgotten all about it. Our mind is so small. We don't remember these infinite numbers of relationships that we've had with all of these beings. And we don't remember that this person that we call now enemy nurtured us, cared for us, and we love them so much. And now they're just acting in a way that isn't conducive to the way that we want them to act. And we're just going to disregard them and call them our enemy and push them away, even though they've loved us and been so kind to us. And if someone in our life loves us and is so kind to us and they have a bad day, we don't stop caring for them and stop wanting them to have happiness and stop wanting them to be free from suffering forever. We shouldn't think in such small ways. We remember how kind they were to us. And if we want happiness, we want to have complete freedom from suffering. We want 100% happiness and 100% freedom from suffering. And they're equally important, and they've been equally kind to me. I wouldn't want the person that I love so much, the person that I'm closest to in my life right now, to have anything less than the best, anything less than 100% happiness and 100% freedom from suffering. I have this feeling that I'm starting to develop for all sentient beings now because of this meditation. As I do it more and more and more, that I'm almost like there's a magnetic connection to me and every single sentient being, because I care for them so much, because I know that they've cared for me so much and love me so much. And this magnetic connection makes me want them to have happiness more than anything in this world, and can't imagine them not happy, and can't feel good about them not having happiness. Mind feels agitated if all of these sentient beings don't have happiness. There's some sort of agitation that takes place. And the mind feels agitated if these beings aren't free from suffering and the causes of suffering, because we've done this reflection and we've become so magnetically connected to them. We have this, it's called love through the force of attraction. And then this great compassion that takes place. And then we say, we'll take it upon ourselves, the task of freeing them all. We'll do it. We're going to bring every single sentient being to a state of happiness and a freedom from suffering. I'm going to bring them to 100% happiness because that's what I crave. And I'm going to bring them to 100% freedom from suffering because that's what I crave. I'm going to do it because I know that that's the best. I want to bring them to the best because I love them all so much, because I've recognized that the person I love so much right now, that feeling that I have for them right now is a feeling that I've had for everyone at some point in time or another in the universe. And the person that I love right now, I want to be free from suffering. I want them to have 100% happiness. So I say, I'm going to take on myself the task of freeing every single sentient being from suffering and bringing them to happiness. And I recognize, well, hold on, Jeff, you can't do that. You have afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience. You don't even know where all these sentient beings are. You don't even believe necessarily there are all of these realms that exist. How are you going to find all of these sentient beings? And then what would you tell all of these sentient beings? What exactly does each and every sentient being need to hear? We have these varieties of mental continuums and varieties of beings. What does each and every one of them need to hear, Jeff, if you were able to find them? And the answer is, I'm not really sure. I don't know what each and every one of their individual capacities are, because I have obstructions to omniscience. I'm not all-knowing. I'm not a reliable guide. I'm not somebody who can really say, I'll take on myself the task of freeing them all, unless that includes the step of myself becoming a Buddha. So we land at this place where we say, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And we think about this over and over and over again. So this contrived thought, this contrived way of coming about this mind that's so connected to each and every being in the universe and wants them to have happiness and the causes of happiness and wants to do something about them having happiness and the causes of happiness, becomes so real that you walk by someone, as we say in the supermarket, and you feel this connection, this magnetic connection to them, and wish that you could quickly become a Buddha for their sake, because they've been so kind to you. You see them as such kind beings who you want to repay. And the only way you can really repay the kindness they've shown you, the only acceptable way to you, is to bring them to the only acceptable state that you want. And that's complete, fearlessness and infinite bliss. So you do this meditation over and over, it gets stronger and stronger. So now imagine if you had this state of mind and you were a bodhisattva, what would you do for sentient beings? You'd start teaching them, because the Buddhas can't remove suffering. Bodhisattvas can't remove your suffering, right? The quote, there's no water that can be splashed on you to get you free. They can't just suddenly go, voila, and give you a spiritual realization. It's by teaching the truth. teaching suchness, that beings are liberated. So if you were a bodhisattva, if you had this desire to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, and your path was going to need to be focused on helping sentient beings, engaging in generosity and ethics in relation to them, and patience with them, and effort in relation to them, and so forth. You know, you would then, if you were a bodhisattva, figure out how to get to each and every single sentient being, to teach them. If your goal is to get them to Buddhahood, to get them to the state of happiness that you seek, then you would start working on it and become more and more reliable as you got closer to Buddhahood. So we imagine ourselves in a way now, in a contrived way, able to do that. Imagine that we could reach every single sentient being, because we eventually will be able to do that. All sentient beings will become a Buddha or sentient beings. So we will eventually, you know, be in a place where we can reach every single sentient being. We can reach everyone in the universe in some way or another, to help them, to show them whatever truth they need to hear at that moment in order to move closer to that state of complete Buddhahood. So let's now imagine that just for a moment, we are those bodhisattvas. And we bring every single sentient being in the universe here, and we see the merit field as masses are increasing, like an auditorium is filling out. We imagine the merit field in the space in front of us, all the gurus, Buddhas, and bodhisattvas, all those holy beings that we just mentioned, are just becoming more and more blissful, and that you just see light rays and nectars. You know, no specific meditation, just, you know, white, red, blue, light rays and nectars just coming out of the merit field, just of ecstasy, almost bliss, because they see the auditorium filling up. They see all sentient beings are assembling here, all the hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, demigods, gods. Imagine you've gotten every single sentient being in the universe here, and you've left out none. And it says, you know, we start, you know, when we're doing meditations, we start with our loved ones, and you know, in terms of wanting them to have happiness and the causes of happiness, and freedom from suffering, and the freedom from and the causes of suffering. We start with our friends, then we move to our neutrals, and now we move to our enemies. But we've washed that away already in our meditation. We don't have those labels. We have beings that would equally benefit. So we imagine we bring every single sentient being in the universe here, who's in need of hearing the Dharma, because they don't have fearlessness and they don't have bliss. So the only way you can get fearlessness and bliss is to follow these specific steps and get rid of the self-grasping ignorance, and get rid of the self-cherishing attitude at its gross and subtle level, at its level of stain even. And that's the only way you can do it. So you have to apply specific antidotes to the stains that we currently have. So we have all beings in the universe here, the holy beings and the yet to be holy, about to be holy, holy nature beings are here. And now let's recite the King of Aspiration prayers, just the 7-limb part. We see in Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, in the preliminary practices, where it says, recite the 7 limbs from the prayer of noble conduct. If you look it up, you'll see in Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, this is what Atisha's talking about. So we try to weave in all the different points that we've learned over the decades with Khyentse Geshe Wandak, and we try to leave imprints in our mind of all these holy scriptures. And that's why I said today, I just want to read this Nagarjuna text. I think it's so incredible. We talk about Buddha nature all of the time. Let's hear what Nagarjuna says about Buddha nature, not as a diversion or moving from the text we're on, as an ornament to what we're currently doing in the Lamrim Chenmo in the medium scope section. Okay. So the King of Aspiration prayers, Samantabhadra's aspiration to good actions, the Sanchya Mulam from the Ganda Vyuha chapter of the Avatamsaka Sutra, Avatamsaka Sutra. So in the language of India, Arya, Bhadra, Sarya, Prana, Dana, Radza. In the language of Tibet, Papa, Zampo, Chupi, Molanji, Jelpo. In the English language, the King of Aspiration prayers, Samantabhadra's aspiration to good actions. Translator's homage. Homage to Manjushri, the youthful. Okay, so now we go through the 7 limbs, and I will point out as we get to each limb, like there may be a typo on this, But it's only in the limb of offering. We've been over this a bunch, but so these are the 7 limbs. So imagine you're making these 7 limbs, this 7-limb prayer in front of, or to, however you want to put it, to and in front of, depending on which limb, the merit field that's in the space in front of you, all the holy gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, and you're leading all beings who have afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience in this prayer in order to be free of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience, in order to become Buddhas for the sake of all sentient beings. That's the purpose of doing this, whilst understanding that we are empty of inherent existence. This prayer is empty of inherent existence, and the sentient beings are empty of inherent existence. Prostrating is empty of inherent existence, etc. So we always want to recognize the emptiness of action, agent, and object whenever we're engaging in any practice. It's called sealing it with emptiness, because the nature of reality is something that we always want to include within each of our practices, because if we don't, we can have a tendency to just create a secondary samsara that grasps at this other new thing that I do called prostrations, Buddhas, and that are lions of human race, as being truly existent. So we want to make sure that we don't reify or make something truly established that isn't, by just kind of switching seats on the Titanic. So it's really important that we do this when we're doing our practices. And in the beginning stages, of course, this isn't something we think about as much, but those of you who have been on the path for quite some time and been practicing, make sure that you're really always kind of checking in with your kind of grasp on things. Am I holding at all of these things as being inherently existent? Am I meditating on emptiness as if it's a thing that's a positive phenomena, or am I seeing emptiness as an absence of something that needs to be understood? So it's important for us to always seal our practices with emptiness, so we aren't just creating a second samsara. Geshe Dorje Damdi said that you can do that with practice. You can create just like a new samsara. You were operating as, this person who was doing this, that, and the other thing. Now you're operating as this person doing, as a Buddhist, doing this, that, and the other thing. And your view, you've just kind of switched your kind of self-grasping to grasping at a self who was this guy or gal, to grasping at a self that's now this guy or gal. So it's important to always seal everything with emptiness. And because we're Mahayana practitioners, remember that we're doing it for the sake of all sentient beings. We're making these prostrations, as I said last week. We're imagining that we're getting up as quickly as possible and taking all sentient beings in the hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigod, and God's realm out of cyclic existence as quickly as possible as we make these prostrations. So we're not only incorporating the merit field while we're doing this, we're incorporating the bodhicitta field. We're incorporating all sentient beings in our practice, because we know it's in dependence upon sentient beings that we can practice and become Buddhas. We will need them to become Buddhas. So we really can intensify our practices by really knowing what we're doing when we're doing them, and that makes them make it real in our lives. Because if we're not thinking about it in these ways, and we're not really analyzing what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it, then we're kind of defeating the purpose. And maybe we just could watch Lord of the Rings or something, I don't know. So let's go. Prostration. To all the Buddhas, the lions of the human race. And nothing against Lord of the Rings. It's a great movie. I just mean it's like just kind of imagining fairy tales and so forth. Lions, witches, and wardrobes or something like this. So we want to make sure that it's something that's real, because this is all real. And this all can be something we arrive at logically. It's not something we just have to have blind faith in or think is neat like we're watching a movie. And the more we can understand the meaning behind it, the more we can taste it. To all the Buddhas, the lions of the human race, in all directions of the universe, through past and present and future, to every single one of you I bow in homage. Devotion fills my body, speech, and mind. Through the power of this prayer, aspiring to good action, all the victorious ones appear vivid here before my mind, and I multiply my body as many times as atoms in the universe, each one bowing in prostration to all the Buddhas. In every atom preside as many Buddhas as there are atoms, and around them all their bodhisattva heirs. And so I imagine them filling completely the entire space of reality, saluting them with an endless ocean of praise. With the sounds of an ocean of different melodies, I sing the Buddha's noble qualities and praise all those who have gone to perfect bliss. To every Buddha, I make offerings of the, okay, so here are the offerings. To every Buddha, I make offerings of the loveliest flowers, beautiful garlands and music, perfumed ointments and the best parasols, the brightest lamps and the finest incense. And to every Buddha, I make offerings, exquisite garments and the most fragrant scents, powdered incense heaped high as Mount Meru, arranged in perfect symmetry. Then the vast and unsurpassable offerings, inspired by my devotion to all the Buddhas and moved by my power of my faith and good actions, I prostrate and offer to all you victorious ones. Confession. Whatever negative acts I have committed while driven by desire, hatred, and ignorance, with my body, my speech, and also with my mind, before you I confess and purify each and every one. Rejoicing. With a heart full of delight, I rejoice at all the merits of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Pratyeka Buddhas, those in training, and the Arhats beyond training, and every living being throughout the universe, imploring the Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma. You who are like beacons of light shining through the worlds, who pass through the stages of enlightenment to attain Buddhahood, freedom from all attachment, I exhort you, all of you protectors, turn the unsurpassable wheel of Dharma, requesting the Buddhas not to enter nirvana. Joining my palms together, I pray to you who intend to pass into nirvana, remain for eons as many as atoms in this world, and bring well-being and happiness to all living beings. Dedication. What little virtue have I gathered through my homage, through offering confession and rejoicing, through exhortation and prayer, all of it I dedicate to the enlightenment of all beings. Now, again, you're leading all beings in this prayer. We'll do the Heart Sutra. Do it in English. So again, as we recite this Heart Sutra, it's really easy to go, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste. But really, if you could, even if we're doing it fast or slow, if you're doing it fast and thinking of the meaning and feeling it, that's fantastic. I mean, that's the Tibetan monks do that. You have it so memorized that you're able to really, really think of the meaning while you're doing it quickly. But remember, as we hear this, we should be in our minds. It should just be saying that there's no I, there's no inherently existent I, no inherently existent ear, no inherently existent, no intrinsically existent, no objectively existent, no truly existent, because it dependently originates, it dependently originates causes and conditions, dependent origination through wholes and parts, dependent origination through mere imputation, through name. All of these things are not inherently existence. They're mere subjectively, conventionally existent. They exist through the power. They come into being through the power of designation, through the power of name. There's a name being put on a suitable basis of designation somewhere. There's no objective existence that can be found from the side of the object. So that's what the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge we should be meditating on as we're doing this. And when we look at the commentaries, we see that this goes through the 5 paths. We won't section it out today, but goes through the 5 paths. And we can break up, the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, the path of no more learning, as we go through different sections of this Heart Sutra, remembering Jayangapi Lodru's, the first textbook writer of Losa Ling's commentary on this text, breaks this text down into the 5 paths, whilst explaining the emptiness that's contained explicitly. It also not only shows that the mantra is the 5 paths, and the 5 sentences before the mantra are talking about, there's 5 sentences there because that's the 5 paths, but it also shows the breakpoints in this actual sutra where each of the paths are presented. When we look at beautiful commentaries like that commentary just mentioned. And His Holiness Dalai Lama has a beautiful commentary Also, on the Heart Sutra, where you'll find very similar information that I'm presenting about the explicit and implicit meanings. But really important, when we read these sutras, don't just bang it out for the sake of like getting it done. And, it's a blessing. You're speaking of truth. You're leaving imprints. If that's all you want to do, it's a freedom. Rinpoche would say, independent, you do whatever you want. Everybody's free to do, there's no ruler. But if you want to extract what will really mean something and be so sweet to you, I promise, it's going to be necessary to feel these words in a way that aren't just blah, 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 or aren't just, oh, that's neat, that's neat, that's neat. They are that, oh, this is the nature of reality. This is the nature of my eye, and my ear is inherently existent. My tongue, all these things. The Four Noble Truths aren't inherently existent. What does that mean? Because they dependently originate. The king of signs, the king of reasons is dependent origination. What does that mean? Would this thing right here, does it exist as its name? Is it empty of existing as its name? These are the questions that we have to ask ourselves and learn the answers to if we want to know what the Heart Sutra is truly talking about. Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma, called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the Prajnaparamita, saw in this way, he saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva. So now the Buddha puts Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara under a spell. And basically is like, now they've become Buddha's puppets. So just, you've heard that from Rinpoche before, but I just wanted to share that with anybody, who's watching on any other platforms. Why does it say then through the power of the Buddha? Basically, they go under a spell. It says that the Buddha creates through some sort of power of concentration, power of samadhi, and he makes them have this kind of dialogue. How should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Teata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhi soha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Ngala jube ni jo damba ne nguje du ju ngai du do jen ju ba ba la ma yi bu jin zi ni zung gandro zo la ja ze lo. I prostrate to the gatherings of dakinis in the three chakras who abide in the holy yoga of using space. By your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanation, look after practitioners like a mother looks after her child. Agazamara Dajandara Zamara Agazamara Dajandara Agazamara Dajandara Zamara Agazamara Dajandara. Agazamara Dajandara Zamara me de adon gade gade baragade barazangade bodizo ababagoja sanjigai de medoji lobodoji mebodoji shiwadoji dragi baji medobeja danji jedingari so gerendo jaji jewada medonu beja nanjawada dumbadan jimbonzon joji daji de jandenda dele show. By the truth of the existence of the three jewels, may all inner and outer hindrances and adversities be overcome. May they become non-existent. May they be pacified. May they be completely pacified. May all negative forces opposed to the Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from all adverse conditions to the Dharma, and may we obtain all circumstances conducive to the Dharma. May there be auspiciousness, happiness, and well-being here right now. So shall be it. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sanje je danza je janan la janju badu dani jazu ji dagi je ji bezo nanji jola benje sanje jubasho. Sanje je danza je janan la janju badu dani jazu ji dagi je ji bezo nanji jola benje sanje jubasho. Sanje janan je janan la janju badu dani jazu ji dagi je ji bezo nanji jola benje sanje jubasho. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the Immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there's grasping, you do not have the view. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all sentient beings. Okay, here we are, everybody. Another Sunday. As promised, I want to read from a Nagarjuna text called Praise of Dharma Dhatu. And this is a text that goes through, it talks about Buddha nature and really, really drives it home. And then talks about I believe, the different bhumis, the different bodhisattva grounds and so forth. Wow, look at that. And there it is. So I thought it'd be wonderful if we could all read it today together, because we always talk about, at the beginning of the teaching, to rejoice. We're so fortunate. We have this Buddha nature. We have this ability, this Dharma Dhatu, this Buddha nature, basically. We have this within us, this chance that we can all become perfectly wise, perfectly compassionate, perfectly loving, because our mind is empty of inherent existence, just like the Buddha's mind is empty of inherent existence. So we have this proliferating bodhicitta, which means our mind can transform into a state of purity because it's not naturally sullied. And we have, the why can this happen? Because of the emptiness of the proliferating Buddha nature, which is just like the emptiness of the Dharmakaya, same emptiness. So anyway, I don't need to talk. I talk enough a lot. Let's hear Nagarjuna talk for a minute. So I think I can read it right off the screen. There's no reason not to just do this. So this is in praise of Dharma Dhatu by Arya Nagarjuna. We know the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamunie to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and his key students, Buddha Palita and Aryadeva and his student near the end of his life, Chandrakirti. We know we're so fortunate. And then, and all of his students that, clarified the meaning of what he wrote. And then, other students as well that were so influenced by him. In praise of Dharma Dhatu by Nagarjuna. And we read, I think, a couple months ago, Nagarjuna's his biography. In praise of Dharma Dhatu by Nagarjuna. I pay homage to youthful Manjushri. I bow to you, the Dharma Dhatu who resides in every sentient being. But if they aren't aware of you, they circle through this triple being. Due to just that being purified, what is such circling's cause? This very purity is then nirvana. Likewise, Dharmakaya is just this. While it's blended with the milk, butter's essence appears not. Likewise, in the afflictions mix, Dharma Dhatu is not seen. Once you've cleansed it from the milk, butter's essence is without stain. Just so, with the afflictions purified, the Dharma Dhatu lacks all stain. Just as a lamp that's sitting in a vase does not illuminate it at all, This is a really important stanza here that you'll hear a lot in teachings. Just as a lamp that's sitting in a vase does not illuminate at all, while dwelling in the vase of the afflictions, the Dharma Dhatu is not seen. From whichever of its sides you punch some holes into this vase, from just these various places, then light rays will beam forth. Once the Vajra of Samadhi has completely smashed the vase to the very limits of all space, they will shine just everywhere. Unarisen is the Dharma Dhatu, and never cease it will. At all times, without affliction, stainless through beginningless middle end. A blue beryl, the precious gem, is luminous at any time. But if confined within its ore, its shimmer does not gleam. Just so, the Dharma Dhatu, free of stain, while it's obscured by the afflictions, in samsara doesn't shine its light, but in nirvana it will beam. If this element exists through our work, we will see the purest of all gold. Without this element, despite our toil, nothing but misery we will produce. Just as grains, when covered by their husks, are not considered rice that can be eaten, while being shrouded in afflictions, it is not named Buddhahood. Just as rice itself appears when it is free from all its husks, the Dharmakaya clearly manifests once it is free from the afflictions. Banana trees don't have a pith. That's used as an example in the world, but their fruits, their very pith, and all their sweetness we do eat. Just so, when samsara without pith is released from the affliction's peel, its fruition, Buddhahood itself, turns into nectar for all beings. Likewise, from all seeds, fruits are born that match their cause. By which person could it then be proved that there is a fruit without a seed? This basic element, which is the seed, is held to be the basis of all dharmas. Through its purification, step by step, the state of Buddhahood we will attain. Spotless are the sun and moon, but obscured by fivefold stains. These are clouds, smoke, and mist, Rahu's face and dust as well. Similarly, mind, so luminous, is obscured by fivefold stains. Their desire, malice, laziness, agitation, and doubt, too. A garment that was purged by fire may be soiled by various stains. When it's put into a blaze again, the stains are burned, the garment not. Likewise, mind that is so luminous is soiled by stains of craving and so forth, that afflictions burn in wisdom's fire, but its luminosity does not. The sutras teach that emptiness, however many spoken by the victors, they all remove afflictions, but never ruin this dhatu. Water dwelling deep within the earth remains untainted through and through. Just so wisdom in afflictions stays without a single stain. Since Dharma dhatu is not a self, neither man nor a woman, free from all that could be grasped, how could it be labeled self? In all the Dharma that's without desire, you see neither man nor woman. Man and woman are just taught for guiding those plagued by desire, impermanence and suffering and empty. These three, they purify the mind. The Dharma purifying mind, the best, is the lack of any nature. In a pregnant woman's womb, a child exists, but it's not seen. Just so Dharma dhatu is not seen when it's covered by afflictions. Through conceptions of a self and mind, discriminations of names and reasons, the four conceptions will arise based on the elements and their outcome. Even the Buddha's aspiration prayers lack appearance and characteristics immersed in their very own awareness. Buddhas have the nature of permanence. Any horns there are on a rabbit's head are just imagined and do not exist. Just so all phenomena as well are just imagined and do not exist. Also, the horns of an ox do not exist, as having the nature of particles, just as before, so it is as after, what's to be imagined there. Since things dependently originate, and independence too will cease, if not even one of them exists, how can fools imagine them? Now we're talking about inherent existence over and over again here. When we see this exist, we have to say, oh, well, how could things exist? Is he negating existence altogether? No, he's negating a specific kind of existence, intrinsic existence, inherent existence, a true establishment. All these things are synonyms in Madhyamika Prasangika. True establishment, inherent existence, objective existence, all of these things. So this is what Nagarjuna is pointing at when he's saying, if not even one of them exists ultimately. We have to understand this. How the dharmas of the Sugata are established as the very middle is through the ox and rabbit horn examples. The forms of sun, moon, and the stars are seen as reflections upon water without a container that is pure, just so the characteristics are complete. Victorious throughout beginning, middle, and end, undeceiving and so steady, what's like that is just the lack of self. So how can you confine it as a self and mind? About water at the time of spring, what we can say is that it's warm. Of the very same thing, when it's chilly, we just say it's cold. Covered by the web of afflictions, it's called a sentient being. Once it's free from the afflictions, it should be expressed as Buddha. Independence upon eye and form, appearances without a stain occur. From being unborn and unceasing, the Dharma dhatu will be known. Independence upon sound and ear, pure consciousness comes forth. All three Dharma dhatu without signs, linked with thought, this will be hearing. Smelling independence upon nose and smell is an example for the lack of form, the lack of inherent existence of form. So the form we have smelling is one example of form. So a smell. So here it's saying, smelling in dependence upon nose and smell is an example of for the lack of form. So we see dependent origination. If things have dependent originate, they are not autonomous. They don't have inherent existence. Likewise, it's the nose's consciousness that conceptualizes Dharma dhatu. The nature of the tongue is emptiness, and the dhatu of the taste is void. Being of the Dharma dhatu's nature, consciousness is non-abiding. From the nature of a body, pure, and the characteristics of the tangible conditions, what is free from such conditions is to be expressed as Dharma dhatu. Once conceptions and its concepts are relinquished with regard to phenomena whose principle is mind, it's the very lack of nature of phenomena that you should cultivate as Dharma dhatu. What you see and hear and smell, what you taste and touch, phenomena as well. Once yogins realize them in this way, the characteristics are complete. Eye and ears, and also nose, tongue and body and mind as well. The six ayatanas fully pure. This is true reality's own mark. Mind as such is seen as two, worldly and beyond the world. Clinging to it as self, it is samsara in your very own awareness, true reality. Since desire is extinguished, it is nirvana. Hatred and ignorance are extinguished too, since these have ceased. Its Buddhahood itself, the very refuge for all beings. Due to realization and its lack, all is in this very body. Through our own conceptions, we are bound. But when knowing our nature, we are free. Enlightenment is neither far nor near, and neither does it come nor go. It's whether it's seen or not, right in the midst of our afflictions. By dwelling in the lamp of prajna, wisdom, it turns into peace supreme. So the collecting of sutras says, by exploring yourself, you should rest. Children blessed by tenfold power's force seem like the crescent of the moon, but those beings with afflictions do not see the Tathagata at all. Just as ghosts with thirst and hunger see the ocean to be dry, those obscured by ignorance think the Buddhas don't exist. What's the Bhagavat supposed to do for inferiors and those whose merit's low? It's just like the supreme of jewels put in the hand of one who's blind. But for beings who acquired merit, the Buddha dwells before their eyes with 32 marks shining bright in their luminous and glorious light. Through the protector's Rubakaya may remain for many, though the protector's Rubakaya may remain for many eons for guiding those in need of guidance, it is just this dhatu that is different. Ascertaining the object of the mind, consciousness will engage in it. Once your very own awareness becomes pure, you will dwell right in the Bhumi's nature. The great and mighty one's supreme abode, Akanishta, that is so beautiful, and consciousness, all three of them fuse into a single one, I say. And for knowing all among the childish, the diversity among the noble, and the great and mighty infinite in time, what's the cause of time and eons? For sustaining the duration during eons, truly infinite, of all beings' outer realms, and for creatures' life force to remain, this is what's the inexhaustive cause, and that's whose fruitions inexhaustible through the special trait of non-appearance, and engage in full for prajna's sake. Don't think enlightenment is far away, and don't conceive it as close by. With the sixfold objects not appearing, it's awareness of reality just as it is, just as from a mix of milk and water that is present in a vessel. Geese just sip the milk, but not the water, which remains just as it is. Just so, being covered by affliction, wisdom dwells within the body, one with them, but yogins just extract the wisdom and leave the ignorance behind. As long as we still cling to self and mind, we conceive of outer things through this, but once we see the double lack of self, the seeds of our existence find their end. Since it is the ground for Buddhahood, nirvana, purity, permanence, and virtue too, and because the childish think of two in the yoga of their non-duality, please rest. Generosity's multiple hardships, ethics gathering beings good, and patience benefiting beings. Through these three, the dhatu blooms. Enthusiastic vigor for all dharmas, mind that enters meditative poise, prajna at your permanent resort. These two make enlightenment unfold, prajna that joins with means. Aspiration prayers very pure, a firm stand in power, wisdom too. These four dharmas make the dhatu flourish. To bodhicitta, I pay no homage, saying such is evil speech. Where there are no bodhisattvas, there will be no dharmakaya. Some dislike the seeds of sugarcane, but still wish to relish sugar. Without seeds of sugarcane, there will be no sugar. When these seeds of sugarcane are well guarded, fostered, and refined, molasses, sugar, candy too will then come from them. With bodhicitta is just the same. When it is guarded, fostered, and refined, arhats, conditioned realizers, Buddhas too will then arise and spring from it. Just as farmers guarding seeds of rice and others, thus the leaders guard all those who's aspiring to the supreme jnana. Just as on the 14th day of waning, just a little bit of moon is seen, those aspiring to supreme jnana will see a tiny bit of Buddhakaya. Just as when the waxing moon is seen more in every moment, Those who've entered on the bhumi see its increase step by step. On the 15th day of waxing, eventually the moon is full. Just so when the bhumi's end is reached, the Dharmakaya full and clear, having generated this mind truly through continuous firm aspiration for the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha, irreversibility shows time and again. Through the ground of darkness, all relinquished, and the ground of brightness firmly seized, is ascertained right at this point. Therefore, it is designated joy, first bodhisattva ground. What's been stained, what's been tainted through all times by the stains of passion and so forth, is pure now without stains. That is called the stainless one. Once the affliction webs pulls back, stainless prajna brightly shines. This dispels all the boundless darkness, and thus is the illuminating. These are the grounds. It is always gleams with light so pure and is engulfed by wisdom's shine, with all bustle being fully dropped. Hence the bhumi is held to be the radiant. It triumphs in science, sports, and arts and crafts. The full variety of samadhi's range, and over afflictions very hard to master. Thus it is considered difficult to master. The three kinds of enlightenment: the gathering of all that's excellent, arising, ceasing, too exhausted. The bhumi is held to be the facing. Since it's ever playing with a web of light that's configured in a circle and has crossed samsara's swampy pond, this is labeled gone afar. Being cared for by the Buddhas, having entered in wisdom's ocean, being without effort and spontaneous by the hordes of Maras, it's immovable. Since the yogins have completed their discourses teaching Dharma and all awarenesses, discriminating perfectly, the bhumi is considered excellent insight. The kaya, with this wisdom's nature, which is stainless, equal to the sky, holds the Dharma of the Buddhas. From it, the cloud of Dharma forms. The abode of the Buddha Dharmas fully bears the fruit of practice. This fundamental change of state is called the Dharmakaya. Free from latent tendencies, you're inconceivable. Samsara's latent tendencies, they can't be conceived. You're completely inconceivable. Through what could you be realized? And this is talking about you right now, all of you. Talking about me right now. Go down, back a little to 89. So I can just, right here. Free from latent tendencies, you're inconceivable. Samsara's latent tendencies, they can be conceived. You're completely inconceivable. Through what could you be realized? You have this Buddha nature. You will transform into this being who has gotten rid of the afflictive obstructions and even the latent tendencies, even the obstructions to omniscience, the latent tendencies, the stains of the afflictive obstructions will be removed, and you'll be able to cognize conventional and ultimate reality simultaneously and be the most reliable guide in the universe. When you're free from latent tendencies, you're inconceivable. Samsara's latent tendencies, they can be conceived. You're completely inconceivable. Through what could you be realized? Beyond the entire sphere of speech, outside the range of any senses to be realized by mental knowing, I bow to and praise whatever is suitable, whatever that is. In this manner of gradual engagement, the highly renowned children of the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, through the wisdom of the cloud of Dharma, see phenomena's empty nature. Once their minds are cleansed completely, they have gone beyond samsara's depths. They rest calmly on a throne whose nature is a giant lotus. Everywhere they are surrounded by lotuses that number billions, in their many jeweled petals light, and with anthers of enthralling beauty. They overflow with tenfold power, immersed within their fearlessness, never straying from the inconceivable Buddha Dharmas without reference point. Through all their actions of outstanding conduct, their merit and their wisdom are complete. This full moon surrounded everywhere by the stars that are its retinue. In the sun that is the Buddha's hands, stainless jewels shine their light. Through empowering their eldest children, they bestow empowerment on them. Abiding in this yoga that's so great, with divine eyes, they behold worldly beings debased by ignorance, distraught and terrified by suffering. From their bodies without effort, light rays are beaming forth and open wide the gates for those who are engulfed in ignorance gloom. It's held that those in the nirvana with remainder into the nirvana without remainder pass. But here, the actual nirvana is mind that's free from any stain. The non-being of all beings, this nature as is its sphere, the mighty bodhicitta seeing it, is fully stainless Dharmakaya. In the stainless Dharmakaya, the sea of wisdom finds its place, like the variegated jewels, being's welfare is fulfilled from it. This completely completes the praise of the Dharma Dhatu, composed by Arya Nagarjuna, translated by Krishna Pandita and the Tibetan translator Sutram Jawa. So thank you for listening to that. I really enjoyed really enjoyed reading that. And I think you can see, if you think that you understand everything, read this text and then come on over and give me a commentary on it. Yeah, it's amazing how much there is to learn, but how much we also do know, and how many things can really touch our hearts when we read something as complicated as this. That imagine before we got into the Dharma and we'd never heard anything about the Dharma, and then we opened this or we heard this, we'd have no clue. We wouldn't have any idea what most of it is referring to. And because of the kindness of Khyentse Geshe Wanda, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Geshe Dorje Damdu, all of these incredible Lamas, Umzila, Geshe Aga, Geshe Gopo, because of their kindness, Lama Zopa Rinpoche's kindness, we have the ability to have some of these stanzas strike chords in our hearts that can say, oh, that's so profound. That gives me goosebumps. That's something that really makes a lot of sense to me. That's something that doesn't really make any sense to me. So we have to look into it. Sometimes, we have to look at translation too, and see if that, we know that all of this work that's being brought into English language is into our ability to understand it in a complete way is a work in progress. So we have to, analyze that part of it as well. But it's amazing that we have texts like this that are in any kind of English in any form to be able to look at. It really amazes me. So now we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and we've made it to the medium scope section. It's incredible. It's really incredible. 2 times now we can say we've completely gone over, the greatness of the teaching's author, the greatness of the teaching, how to listen, the great way to listen to and explain the teaching, and how to lead students through the actual instructions of the small scope. We can say that we've gone through that really thoroughly 2 times. So that's a great thing. Rejoice in that, because we need everything to become a Buddha. And we need the foundation to build the house on. And we've made it to the part where we start to talk about actual pathway. The small scope, we say the paths for small capacity. We say path, we use that word loosely sometimes, but path doesn't really begin till we get to the medium scope. We've set foundation for path. We've set foundation for renunciation. We have some kind of baby renunciation because we were renouncing the lower realms of cyclic existence. But we've really only set a foundation from which to build a real house on, a real house of wisdom that becomes the path, and a real house of renunciation from which we understand that not only the lower realms are a problem, but also the higher realms are a problem. So we have this ripening path of renunciation. We combine in the medium scope with a liberating path of wisdom, and then we can actually achieve, a state of complete freedom, a state of complete freedom from suffering altogether. So we first have to identify exactly what we want to be free from. We have to see it at its most coarse level, what we're looking to be free from, and then, bring it back to its most subtle level of what we want to be free from. And if we have Buddha nature, that means that we can be free from everything that's a problem. So we need to really be certain what the problem is. And once we identify exactly what the problem is, and know it's a problem that we want to do something about, then we have to look at what causes it and find out what we have to do about it. Because once we find out what we have to do about the problem, we better have convinced ourselves thoroughly that it's really a problem, because we're going to find out there's an enormous amount of work and sacrifice and strangeness that's going to have to go on, and uncertainty and doubt from your side that's going to have to go on, and oh, I don't want to go on any longer. That's going to happen. And if you aren't thoroughly convinced that it's worth it, because you can't stand even the subtlest level, you understand even the subtlest bad stuff, you won't, when you find out what the origin of suffering is and what you have to do about it, you just get exhausted. You won't be able to have stick-to-itiveness. You won't stay with it. You might get really excited about it for a moment. You might even, just become like the most outfitted practitioner that's ever been seen. You have all of the new stuff, and the malas and all the things, some shirts that could kind of get the world to know you're into a new groove. Anyway, so I just lost my train of thought with that, but it's something that we have to reflect upon. We have to be thoroughly convinced if we want to have that stick-to-itiveness. Not just that initial charge of, outfitting ourselves and letting the world know that we found something really cool and new, and that what they think is dumb. That's our initial response. And then, we find out, well, what they think's dumb, but changing the dumb part's really hard. And like, they're not so dumb. I mean, we all kind of think this way, and it's really easy to kind of weasel your way out of spiritual practice. Like, oh, well, nobody else is doing this Buddhism thing. I mean, that neighbor, they all live great. They have a nice family. They seem to be happy. They go on vacation. They don't know about any of this stuff. This doesn't even really, I don't know. I don't think it's that bad. They look like they're happy over there. So if we aren't thoroughly convinced that the happiest looking person is unhappy at a level of some degree, then we aren't going to keep going, because there'll be something that'll distract us that'll be better bait than the Dharma. And the Dharma isn't bait, because it actually brings us into this happiness that we're seeking. But the samsaric bait is the suffering of change, is that contaminated happiness that we keep seeking out. And we'll see some shiny object if we haven't convinced ourselves that there are no shiny objects in samsara, and we'll just go slowly. We'll find ourselves backing out of the room. Maybe we'll do it little by little, because we're a little embarrassed. We don't want, those other spiritual folks to see it all at once, that we're just kind of leaving it and we've given up on it. And it'll be maybe a slow process. And then we just slowly go do what we were doing before we thought of any of this. But the problem is we're a little poisoned now. So we have this kind of, we know better a little bit, but we push it aside. And then, we push it aside. We know better a little bit, but we push it aside. So now our Dharma has created some like greater form of suffering, because we've given up on what we know kind of sounds like it makes more sense than anything we've ever heard. We're pushing that aside, and now our mind's in like cognitive dissonance completely, and we're like operating in a way that isn't really what tallies with what we know better than, and then it really creates a mess. So we have to be very careful to follow these things in the proper stages, figure out exactly what suffering is. Why don't I want it? Be sure you don't want it, because it's pretty deep, the well of what we say suffering is. And you're not going to like a lot of the things that I tell you suffering is. That moment of bliss that you have, that happiness, that contaminated happiness, anything, think of that highest happiness that you had. I'm going to tell you that's suffering, because it's in cyclic existence. It's contaminated. It's going to lead to a frame of reference of a fall that's farther than if you didn't have it. Because now you know something really good, and it's going to turn into suffering. So it's loaded. We have to come to believe this beyond a shadow of a doubt. Understand this beyond a shadow of a doubt. Wake up knowing this beyond a shadow of a doubt. That doesn't mean we don't participate. That doesn't mean that we aren't interacting, we aren't trying to enjoy life, we aren't trying to, go about, it's not like we suddenly become masochists because it doesn't matter if we're happy or sad. There are mundane happiness and super mundane happiness. Mundane happiness we all want, we all should have. You're not going to be able to practice Dharma very well if you don't have some level of comfort. So you have to be able to look at these things intellectually and understand that you're wanting to emerge from suffering, not from happiness. No problem with happiness. You're wanting to emerge from suffering, but you have to understand what suffering is exactly and see that the happiness within samsara is suffering to some degree. It's not the best kind. It's not the good happiness. It's got a problem with it. It's got a suffering of change within it. It's contaminated to a degree. So this is why we spend so much time talking about the numbers of suffering and so forth. So we left off. I may actually reread a paragraph or something we read last time. I apologize if I do that. But I think it's important that we started the meditation. We talked a little bit last week about, Lama Tsongkhapa keeps going back to themes over and over again. One theme is that if he's teaching the great scope, he's going to refer back to the medium scope, and he's going to refer back to the small scope, and he's going to tell you that these are the foundational practices, and these are practices that will continue all the way to Buddhahood. You'll have to know them, practice them, do them. The ethics of the solitary individual liberation vehicle or the Hinayana vehicle, the ethics, as it says in Lama Tsongkhapa's prayer for the flourishing of Je Tsongkhapa's Dharma, outwardly pacified by the hearer's conduct. You know that no matter where you are on the path, you're still following the ethics in the lowest, the lower level of teachings, or lower scope of teachings, all the way to the highest tantric level. I mean, one of the tantric vows says not to discard the pradamoksha vows and the bodhisattva vows. I mean, it's just part of it. So these practices are all, this is an integrated path. All of these things are necessary practices. So one common theme you see Lama Tsongkhapa say is that you have to understand that everything I've already said up to this point is still applying. You have to know all of it. You have to have realized everything I've said up to this point to realize the next stuff. If you haven't realized everything I've said up to this point, you're not going to really realize this next stuff. So you have to have realized the small scope teachings if you're going to realize the medium scope teachings. That's one theme. The next theme you see over and over again is Lama Tsongkhapa reminds us that no matter what we're doing, we need to guard our mind. We're telling our mind exactly what to do, whether it's analytical meditation or fixed meditation. If we're analyzing a text, we're going to be just analyzing the text. We've told our mind, we're just analyzing this. We're not thinking about Dairy Queen. We're thinking about this right here. So if our mind is thinking about Dairy Queen, what's happening? It's excited, it's scattered. So what are we doing? Our mindfulness we told our mind, we're not going to forget what? That we're reading, we're going to stay on this subject. We're going to stay on studying this Lam Rim. So we have this little spy in our mind. It's making sure that we're really focused on this. Our focal object in a loose sense, don't jump on me, in a loose sense, our focal object here is, is looking at the text in a very, very clear way. And so that's our mindfulness is, we're trying to study. We're trying to not have our mind go all over the place, not be distracted, but not be sleepy either. So Lama Tsongkhapa's second theme is, he brings up over and over again, tell your mind what to do and guard it. Guard against excitement, scattering on one side, and guard against dullness, lethargy, sleepiness, whatever words you want to use on the other side. In any endeavor you're engaging in. So Lama Tsongkhapa reminds us that there's foundational practices you have to keep doing, and then reminds us again and again and again that we should be doing this with really, what's the word? Intentional, in an intentional way, where we're, if you go, it's almost, the wording's almost exact. If you go back to meditation session. And then you go to, it's pretty interesting when you look at it. Just real quickly, I'll show you what I mean. So in the beginning of the meditation session, it says the actual, so we're going back a little bit in the Lamrim Chemo. Now we're in the meditation session, about 100 pages into the first volume. I'm just going to read one paragraph, and I'm going to show you something interesting. That which is known as meditation is the act of sustaining an object of meditation and specific subjective aspects by repeatedly focusing your mind upon a virtuous object of meditation. The purpose of this is as follows. From beginningless time, you have been under the control of your mind. Your mind has not been under your control. Further, your mind tended to be obscured by the afflictions and so forth. Thus, meditation aims to bring this mind, which gives rise to all faults and flaws, under control, and then it aims to make it serviceable. Serviceability means that you can direct your mind as you wish towards a virtuous object of meditation. So it's, and it says then, and then it goes on to, say that, you really have to, make this a habit. Now we move forward to this 8 types of suffering. And here it says, the Sutra of Cultivating Faith in the Mahayana. Now we're in the 8 types of suffering, page 272, 73 in the first volume. It's a quote we got done last time from I think we did this too, but I want to reread it. Doesn't matter. First, from Shanti Deva's text, A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. The one who knows reality has said that prayers, austerities, and such, even if practiced for a long time, are pointless if done with a distracted mind. Then the Sutra of Cultivating Faith in the Mahayana. O child of a good family, from this enumeration you should know that faith in the Mahayana of the Bodhisattvas and all that emerges out of the Mahayana comes from properly contemplating the meaning and the teaching with a mind that is not distracted. So a lot of times we think of not distracted mind when we're doing fixed meditation. Oh, we're fixing on this object. But we also don't want a mind distracted when we're doing analysis of things. When we're reading, we don't want a distracted mind. So it says here, a mind that is not distracted means a mind that does not wander to objects that are other than the virtuous object of meditation. The meaning and the teaching refers to the meaning and the words, and properly contemplating means analyzing and reflecting with discernment. This shows that any achievement of a virtuous quality requires both undistracted focus and analytical discernment. Therefore, the Buddha says that any achievement of a virtuous quality in the 3 vehicles requires a state of mind that is both an actual meditative serenity or a similitude of it, which rests one-pointedly on its virtuous object of meditation without wandering from it, and an actual insight or a similitude of it, which carefully analyzes a virtuous object of meditation and distinguishes both the real nature and diversity of phenomena. Similarly, the sutra unraveling the intended meaning, Maitreya, you should know that all virtuous qualities, mundane or supermundane, of the Shravakas, the Bodhisattvas, or the Tathagatas result from meditative serenity and insight. Construe meditative serenity and insight here as including both actual serenity and insight and states of mind that are similar to them. For it is not certain that all the good qualities of the 3 vehicles develop as a result of actual serenity and insight. Okay, so now we're going to get into the 8 types of suffering. So we have done, when maybe 6 months ago or so, when we did our beginning meditation, we talked a lot about the 8 types of suffering and enumerated them and talked about them and talked about the 6 types of suffering, went over them, explained them, and the 3 types of suffering. We would do that in our meditation. We would say, we're so fortunate that we have Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings in our world now. Think about the 4 noble truths, the first noble truth of suffering, the second noble truth of cause of suffering or origin of suffering, third noble truth, the cessation of suffering, and then the 4th noble truth, the path leading to the cessation of suffering. And then when we went back to the first noble truth, we went through the truth of suffering. We said that we can divide suffering into various categories, but the main thing that Buddha Shakyamuni is talking about, the main thing we're renouncing is the pervasive compounded suffering, conditioned suffering, because that is the condition from which we're forced again and again and again, without any independence into the different aggregates among the realms of cyclic existence. And it's because of this pervasive compounded suffering that we have among the 8 types and 6 types of suffering and the other 2 types of suffering, because the pervasive compounded suffering is within the category of the 3 types of suffering, and the other 2 are the suffering of suffering and suffering of change. All of those things come about because of the pervasive compounded suffering. But so we have to look at everything at its grossest level, and then at its most coarse, its subtle level, to be able to really understand things, to be able to understand the suffering of change, to be able to see that and get compassion. You see a child who's playing and so happy, and you can have compassion arise for them instead of saying, oh, they're so happy. It's so wonderful to see the pure joy of a child. You will develop compassion and say, you can say that, that's nice, that's wonderful, that's joyful. I wish I could have such a less corrupt mind, but then also be able to see that that state of happiness is the suffering of change. To be able to really, really understand reality, you have to go through these types of suffering at their gross level and move to their more and more and more subtle level to be convinced that there's a problem that is big enough to put in the effort that it's going to take to fix. You have to convince yourself the problem is big enough. And that's why when we went over this is the superior truth of suffering, 8 sufferings, 6 sufferings, 3 sufferings, 3 sufferings, that final suffering, pervasive compounded suffering, is the kind of mastermind behind all of it, if you can say that, because it's the self-grasping ignorance that gives rise to the inappropriate attention, that gives rise to the afflictions, that gives rise to the contaminated karmas, that gives rise to samsara, voila. This is the 8 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, and the 3 types of suffering. And that third, suffering, pervasive compounded suffering, driven exclusively at the root by the self grasping ignorance. So first we look at these different types of suffering, which can help you some of them help you to understand the suffering of change really well also, because if you can see the suffering of aging, you can see how youth has within it the suffering of change. If you could see, etc. So you can start to infer when you're looking at the grosser types of suffering, the coarse types of suffering, headaches and backaches and so forth. Those that lack those things because they haven't gotten there yet, that happiness that they're undergoing is the suffering of change. It's contaminated. It isn't lasting. It's not reliable. It won't always be. That state won't always be. So we look at we enumerate these various types of suffering, and we start with 8. So we say we'll just list them today: the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death. So we know those very, very well. Those are the famous ones. The famous 4. Everyone knows those. And then we move on to the suffering of encountering what is unpleasant. And then meeting the suffering of separating from what is pleasant. So you have something that you meet with something unpleasant, suffer. You have something you really find pleasant and it leaves you. Oh, that's suffering. We know what that feels like. We know what it felt like when Rinpoche left our world. We know what that feels like. The suffering of not getting what you want. How many things have you wanted you didn't get? How's that feel? How'd that work out? Feel good? The Buddha wasn't just making up stuff that had no relevance. These were pretty clearly things that were in our lives that are convincing. And then the suffering of the 5 appropriated aggregates, meaning, that we have to be forced again and again into these aggregates that are the basis for the states of suffering, the mental and physical basis for suffering. Yeah, that's it. So those are the 8. And when we become really connected and close to them, we say, oh, the Buddha is 100% right. These 8 types of suffering are truly clear. I didn't pick out they says the suffering of the 5 appropriated aggregates that were forced on me. There's no way I can conclude whether I believe in past lives, future lives. I can't conclude that I picked all of these details out, that all of these things that are happening, the way my body is, the way it looks, all of this time I was born and all of that. I can't conclude that I picked all that out, that was my doing, some sort of it was some forcing, however, it just it was forced on me. And now whatever, it's like I got to play the cards I'm dealt, as they say. I don't have independence. The Buddha said that lack of freedom is misery. That's the real problem, is samsara, is this misery that we have, this kind of Groundhog Day that keeps happening over and over and over and over again. That we can't get away from. We can't get away from having among the 8 types of suffering, the 6 types of suffering, the 3 types of suffering. We just have this happen again and again and again, this wheel of cyclic existence. Sentient beings grasp at I and mine, and because of this, turn like buckets on a water wheel, the higher and lower realms, up and down, and shucking off bodies and suffering over and over and over again. And, it's not a situation that anybody, if they believed it 100%, wouldn't see urgency in doing something about. So we have to be convinced to see that urgency. So we act urgently. So we behave, in a way that makes sense. If these things are all true, what Rinpoche told us, and the Dalai Lama says, and Buddha Shakyamunie, and Narya Nagarjuna, and Asanga, what they say is totally 100% true. We need to get cracked. We got to do something. There is urgency here. There is a major urgency. We learned that in the second topic, in the Lam Rim, in the small scope. Or third topic, rather. Teacher, life of leisure and opportunity, death and impermanence. So we learned that right there. The third kind of topic. We're so fortunate we have these teachings in our world that we can figure out how to undo birth, aging, sickness, and death, like separating from the pleasant, meeting with the unpleasant, and not getting what we want, and the suffering of the appropriated aggregates. We're so fortunate, right? We have a way to undo. So we're bound to cyclic existence. We're tied up, as we've learned, in previous classes, as Rinpoche taught us. We're tied to cyclic existence by this cause and effect relationship between the truth of origin, what causes suffering, and suffering, the result. So because of this, we're bound to cyclic existence. But we can begin to untie this, and we can begin to be free from, unbound from cyclic existence by relying upon the path that the Buddha stated we needed to rely upon to serve as an antidote to the origin of suffering, to be able to achieve the third noble truth, the truth of cessation of suffering. And we will, and we can. And we won't only achieve the cessation of suffering, we'll also achieve bliss, because we're on the Mahayana path, and our goal is Buddhahood, and we will settle for nothing less. So don't settle for any partial instructions. Try to make this all part of your life. Change your mind with these teachings. Try to see how they relate to you personally. Try to see how they relate to you building your compassion for sentient beings more and more and more. How you can relate to making your meditations bigger and bigger, so that when you sit down and you start to imagine the merit field that all seems like these truly real beings you're so connected to that can truly save all of your lives. And all these sentient beings that you brought here because you have this empathy, at least, that builds into love and compassion for them, because you know your own state so well, because you've sat through so many of these teachings, and you've identified your suffering so well, you identified their suffering so well, and you've identified that you love them so much that you want to do something about it. So let's all do something about it. And thank you for being here, because it means that you are doing something about it. And we're among very, very few folks that are doing something about it. And we need as many beings as possible to become Buddhas, because there's so many states of suffering and so many sentient beings that need so many varieties of help. We need so many varieties of enlightened beings to be able to approach them, that have connected to them in varieties of ways, that they'll know exactly how to help them. Okay, if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. That's a tough entry, right? It's kind of a like, okay, I'm a spiritual practitioner. So it's funny, Sachin Kongan Nimpo, in his teaching that he got directly from Manjushri, and what Lord Atisha would confirm that, being a spiritual practitioner means abandoning kind of the attachment for this life. And then Manjushri tells Sachin Kongan Nimpo that being a spiritual practitioner means kind of abandoning the thoughts of this life, being attached to this life. So we see that the door into this, I practice spirituality. The door into even that, we say we're Mahayanas, then we find out the door into that's bodhicitta. Then that's oops. Then we say, well, we're practicing this or that. But when we see that how complex it really is, and what kind of a mind we would really, really need to be a spiritual practitioner. Oh boy, I know I have so much work to do. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. According to Manjushri, Sachin Kongan Nimpo, and Atisha. Wow, that's the bar. That's the bar that makes me a spiritual practitioner. Am I focused more on, the things of my future, my future consciousness, what's good for my future consciousness forever? Or am I focused more on this life? Where is it? Only I know that. Only you know that. Ask yourself that. Are you attached to this life or not? Are you a spiritual practitioner or not? Sometimes a spiritual practitioner. Are you becoming more of a spiritual practitioner these days? That's what we do. We, 10% spiritual, 20, 30, 40, and then we get to be 100%. And then we've now, we're no longer attached to this life. But it starts in small steps, baby steps towards it. Doesn't mean we give up because, I still like this life too much. I'm not doing this anymore. It means like, okay, we'll become a little less, a little less, a little less, and then we can become spiritual practitioners. We don't need to be so bold to need these labels to feel good about ourselves. We can be honest with ourselves, and that's what should make us feel good about ourselves, that we're actually being honest with ourselves about our spiritual progress, who we are, and what we really have done, where we'd like to be, and what we need to do to get to that place that we would like to be. So if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. And if there is grasping, you do not have the view. Okay, concluding mandala offering. Hold on. We gotta make some order out of chaos here. Bear with me. No. Before that, I'm going to read the prayer for the flourishing in Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings. I feel so grateful I feel so grateful that I've been connected to J. Rinpoche's teachings and the commentaries, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The teachings are so clear, and Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings are just incredibly clear about what we need to do to become Buddhas. And it's just, I feel so grateful. Prayer for the flourishing of Je Tsongkhapa's teachings, the Losang Jatema. Though he's the father, producer of all conquerors, as a conqueror's son, he produced the thought of upholding the conqueror's Dharma in infinite worlds. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. When in the presence of Buddha Indraketu, he made his vow. The conqueror and his offspring praised his powerful courage. This truth may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. That the lineage of pure view and conduct might spread, he offered a white crystal rosary to the sage, who gave him a conch and prophesied. Through this truth may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. His pure view free of eternity or destruction, his pure meditation cleansed of fog, dark fading and fog, his pure conduct practiced according to the conqueror's orders. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Learned, since he extensively sought out learning, reverent, rightly applying it to himself, good, dedicating all for beings in doctrine. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Through being sure that all scriptures, definitive and interpretive, were without contradiction, advice for one person's practice, he stopped all misconduct. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Listening to explanations of the three Pitakas, realized teachings, practicing of the three highest higher trainings, his skilled and accomplished life story is amazing. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Outwardly calm and subdued by the hearer's conduct, Inwardly trusting in the two stages of practice, he allied without clash the good paths of Sutra and Tantra. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Combining voidness explained as the causal vehicle with great bliss achieved by method, the effect vehicle. Heart essence of 80,000 Dharma bundles, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. By the power of the ocean of oath-bound doctrine protectors like the main guardians of the three beings' paths, the quick-acting Lord, Vaishravana, Karmayana, and may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. In short, by the lasting of glorious gurus' lives, by the earth being full of good, learned, reverend holders of the teaching, and by the increase of power of its patrons, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. And may you all become reverend holders of the teaching. Please. It's all of our jobs to be holders of the Dharma. That's how the Dharma doesn't leave this world, is if there are those who hold this Dharma. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer, the fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa's to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes that I've made, I apologize. I confess them now. May they be purified in my mind, in your mind, by this mantra of Vajrasattva, seeing Vajrasattva in the space in front of you, inseparable from your root Lama. I'm seeing as inseparable from Khyentse Geshe Wandak, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, seeing the Vajrasattva as this pure inseparability from our Lama. And we imagine that white light, rays, and nectars, as we hear this recitation, come down and rain on us and bless us, transforming into white ohms and purifying our body. Red light, rays, and nectars come down on us and rains and transform into red ahs and purify ours and all sentient beings. Again, speech, and then blue light, rays, and nectars shower down and rain on us and all sentient beings and transform into blue homes and purify ours and all sentient beings' minds. So let me do that again. White light, rays, and nectars transform into white ohms, purifying our bodies and all sentient beings' bodies. Red light, rays, and nectars transform into red ahs, purifying ours and all sentient beings' speech. Blue light, rays, and nectars transform into blue homes, transforming ours and all sentient beings' minds into pure minds. And this is all coming from Vajrasattva. Om Benza Sata Samaya Mandubalaya Benza Sata Zeno Badisha Deda Me Baba Sutogaya Me Baba Sukogaya Me Baba Anurada Me Baba Savasidi Me Brayata Savagama Suchime Kitam Shriyam Guru Hum Ha Ho Bhagavan Savadata Gata Benza Mame Munga Benza Baba Mahasamaya Safa Aum May we always be protected by Paul and Lama. Jorama 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 Jagalaraja Rama Jadaja Dunjo Rulongjo. Jorama 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 Dunjo Galarajama Rama Jadaja Dunjo Rulongjo. Jorama 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 Dunjo Galarajama Rama Jadaja Dunjo Rulongjo. Jorama 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 Dunjo Galarajama Rama Jadaja Dunjo Rulongjo. Jorama 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 Dunjo Galarajama Rama Jadaja Dunjo Rulongjo. Jorama 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 Dunjo Galarajama Rama Jadaja Dunjo Rulongjo. Jorama 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 Dunjo Galarajama Rama Jadaja Dunjo I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the Hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. And a long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So fortunate, he's in our world. And we pray that he continues to be in our world for much longer. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. We have a being in this world who's fulfilling all of our needs. So may he remain. And now Rinpoche's prayer. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk, written by Jeff Allen. Homage to Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om Ahom. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to enlightenment in our childlike hands. Just like Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar to our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of 3 capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove the miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Okay. Thank you again, everybody, for your awesome attention. And we'll see you on Thursday, those of you who can make it, where we'll be looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's Source of All My Good. We're so lucky to keep looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's texts and then putting jewels of other texts all over them. And I hope you enjoyed hearing a little Nagarjuna today. Some of it's so hard to understand, but then he dips back into stuff that makes so much sense, that has so much feeling for me. So I can't wait, personally as a practitioner, to be able to have it all really make so much sense and have so much feeling when the words hit my, eyes, ears, whatever you call it, to be able to just instantly know exactly what Nagarjuna means. And I know that I will, because I have the resources just like you to do it. See ya. Have a wonderful week. I pray for you all. Please pray for me.